What's up, y'all? Welcome to Roger's Show Reviews. Today we'll be reviewing Yasuke, which is this new Netflix original anime that just got released, 2021, that details a story about the first African-American samurai. It consists of 6 episodes currently, only one season has released so far, and each episode's about 30 minutes runtime. The show revolves around the main character Yasuke, who is the first African-American samurai in Japan, and he's voiced by none other than Lakeith Stanfield, a stellar voice actor and actor altogether, and he does a fantastic job as Yasuke, and you can really feel Lakeith Stanfield energy from the character, very much so. The show also has an awesome supporting cast, and all the voice actors are fantastic, although Lakeith Stanfield definitely stands out as he has a very recognizable voice. The characters in Yasuke are well built. They're very realistic, believable characters. There is a very mythical magic element to it, including the presence of, robots and magicians and demons and things that, aren't in real life. So it's not necessarily a historical recreation of the life of the first African-American samurai, but it still does a good job of detailing some of the difficulties and the atmosphere around his life and what he went through being the first African-American samurai. So Yasuke is this kind of lone samurai who's a loyal samurai soldier of an army that fell. And so now he's kind of lost and wandering, a man with no purpose, unfortunately. He is traumatized by his past and what happened during the Great War. The show does a fantastic job of kind of giving you a glimpse of how traumatized he is and give you a little bit of backstory and lore to the character Yasuke to make it a little more three-dimensional. But the story essentially follows Yasuke as he befriends this family consisting of a woman, a mom, and her daughter, who the daughter has some special skills, some hidden talents, and specifically magic talents that make her one of the most powerful beings in this universe. And so Yasuke becomes attached to the daughter. So the plot kind of revolves around this dark force that is currently on a path to capture the daughter and use her powers for nefarious deeds, while Yasuke, the black samurai, has to defend her and defend her from the dark forces and also just from the world altogether. So in terms of characters, the show does a good job of giving each character its own distinct and unique past, making them much more relatable and honestly more fun to watch. Yasuke has a very deep background that you'll learn more about. I will say by the end of the show, you're not fully aware of everything that happened in his past and his full story and everything like that, but the show does a good job of still showing you all that he's been through and what is currently traumatizing him. The bad guys in this show, which there are multiple and they evolve over time, also have cool, unique powers and are unique entities. There are some mercenaries also who I found to be very interesting characters, and their evolution over time was also very fun to watch, but they were another great addition to the show, and each of them had their own special unique ability that was fun to watch. In terms of how attention-grabbing and engaging the show is, the show was created by the same studio that made Jujutsu Kaisen and Attack on Titan. So in terms of animation and visuals, it's stunning. It's a very beautiful show to watch. Everything's fluid. The action is very satisfying and very interesting to watch. You can tell how overpowered the main character Yasuke truly is, and it's a great reflection of how in the past the first African-American samurai was truly one of the most powerful samurai, but he never got the credit he deserved because of the color of his skin. And the show does a great job of showing that how people continue to underestimate Yasuke's power and the dire consequences of that. I will say, again, like I mentioned before, the show isn't realistic, so if you're expecting some sort of historical anime or historical detailing, this is very much a character piece, much more dramatic, much more about action adventure. it's a bit lighter than a historical piece would be because of all the magic and everything. The show is still very moving, and there are characters you get much more attached to than others, and the show does a good job of weaponizing those characters that really mean more. In terms of what is unique about the show, the first thing that's going to hit you right when you're watching it, and my favorite part of the show by far, is the soundtrack and the sound. So first of all, huge shout out to Flying Lotus, who is an OG in the music industry and makes some of the greatest beats, known to man. If you haven't checked out Flying Lotus music in the past, highly recommend doing so, because some of the most unique, ephemeral, uplifting, and truly mind-bending sounds, right? And you can really see his influence in this show, 100%. He does a fantastic job of matching up the action with the sounds, making everything fresh and new and beautiful. Truly stunning show. I would even say, just for that, for the sound alone, the show is worth watching. It's only 6 episodes and it's pretty quick, but the sound definitely carries. The theme song also I loved immensely. It's a song by Flying Lotus and Thundercat together, and obviously we all know that's an unbelievably awesome pairing. That's to be expected, but the song is fantastic, and every time it came on I didn't feel the need to skip it. Another thing that was unique is the animation. Like I mentioned before, it matches up with the sound very well, and it's very fluid, it's very dynamic, it's very engaging. It's not like One Piece where it's cut together so you see before and then you see the action happen. Here it's very fluid, just like Jujutsu Kaisen, where you see each punch, you see each slice. The swordplay and sword fighting is awesome, well choreographed. Everything is fun to watch, 100%. I would say if you're a fan of strong traditional values, Japanese culture and Japan altogether, and just kind of want to get a sense of how it was for the first African-American samurai, highly recommend this show. Also, if you want a quick but awesome action-adventure anime series to watch with swordplay, magic, beautiful music and sound, pretty solid character development, then this is a fantastic show for you. If you want a show with a strong male lead, I would highly recommend this show. If you're a fan of the artistic style of Jujutsu Kaisen or Attack on Titan and like that crisp animation where everything looks realistic but also fluid and beautiful, highly recommend this show. Altogether, I would rate this show a 3 out of 4, so I recommend pay attention. I recommend checking it out, at least the first couple episodes, just because it's, in my opinion, a great feat to showcase the story of such an awesome samurai. But beyond that, it's such an awesome story altogether about learning how to deal with loss and about the truth about what honor is. So if you're a fan of any of those, or if anything I mentioned in this review resonated with you, highly recommend checking out this show. At this point, if you are very interested in Yasuke or you don't want anything spoiled whatsoever, I would recommend clicking off. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Now, we'll be moving on to the Parent's Guide, where I'll just detail a little bit about what type of content is in the show, what to expect, so that if you're sensitive to anything, you can get a good sense of if this show is going to resonate with you. And then I'll end off talking about a couple of the lessons and main key takeaways from the show. So if you decide to skip Yasuke, you can still learn a little bit about what exactly it's about. So now, on to the Parent's Guide. So Yasuke overall is I would rate it as a TVMA anime. It has a lot of violence, barely any sexual content, but some moderate language. So I would recommend it for older audiences altogether. But this day and age, with all the young people watching Demon Slayer already and watching Attack on Titan at a very young age, I could see this show being watched by younger audiences as well. In terms of action, I'd give this a 5 out of 5. There are a lot of blood spurts and decapitations, and there's even a scene that's quite grotesque of whether magicians manipulate the body of a character and essentially crush it with magic, and it's very grotesque and gory, so that can be a little bit off-putting and jarring for a lot of users. It is all animated, so in that sense, it's not as graphic as like a real-life show, but it's still graphic, and there is a lot of blood and violence. And the show, every episode has at least 1 or 2 fight scenes, and characters get beat up, bloodied. So I would say it's definitely heavy in the action. In terms of sexual content, I would give this a 1 out of 5. There's really almost none. There was one scene with some very brief male rear nudity. Other than that, there's really nothing at all, nothing to be worried about. In terms of language, there is a little bit of strong language. There's F words and normal language as to be expected. I watched it in the English version, and I found that version to be my favorite just because that's the version with Lakeith Stanfield as the main character. The Japanese version is probably just as good, but I like Keith Stansfield's voice personally, and I also recommend watching it in the English version. So overall, in terms of language, I'd give it a 3 out of 5. Nothing that stands out. It's not grotesque. It's not constant swearing, but there are some strong language that I would not recommend for younger audiences. So overall, I would say this show isn't for younger audiences. I would recommend it for like 18 plus, just because it can be kind of graphic in terms of violence and a little bit of language. But if you're an individual who language does not impact, who violence and language just don't affect you, or you're mature enough to handle that type of content, then I highly recommend this show because I think there's a lot to learn from it. And on that point, now we're gonna be done with the parent's guide and move on to what we learned from the show. I thought this show had a lot of fantastic lessons and knowledge packed into it. One of the most important things I learned from this show, and I noticed that this was emphasized multiple times, is the idea of learning how to recognize when there is nothing to be had here but pain and blood, right? And that's a line that shows up multiple times in the show, and the directors do a good job of consistently presenting this idea of, what is the point of all this violence? And Yasuke brings it up multiple times. He talks about how he approached the situation and it's clear to him that he will win, right? And he even expresses it multiple times. I do not want to harm you guys. I do not want to have any violence or issues. There is nothing to be had here but pain and blood. And yet these people rush him, and yet these people instigate the violence, and they end up, oftentimes dead. And it really goes to show that you need to learn to recognize when you're in over your head, when there is nothing to be gained but pain and blood, so it's best to walk away, or to, I wouldn't say admit defeat, but just avoid the situation altogether, because nothing means more than your life. The show also does a fantastic job about detailing the Japanese vision of what honor means, right? And what honor means in this day and age. So honor, in my opinion, and in I think this day and age's opinion, is the ability to just stand up for what you believe in and stand up for your family, your culture, your past, what makes you you, right? So your ability to fight for others, to fight for the ones who can't fight for themselves, to fight for the unprotected. That's what honor means. Right, and the show also does a great job of outlining the point that knowledge is power, and to always keep learning, never stop learning. One of my favorite lines from the show ever was the idea that cultures make us trade one leader for another, but all we truly have eternally, through all the leaders, through everything, are our own values and our own relationships. So in my opinion, that's what you need to prioritize. Prioritize your own relationships, your own values. Prioritize who you are and hold your personal relationships dear. Treat your friends nicely and don't alienate people, because the energy you output is the energy you receive. The show also does a great job of outlining the idea of the past influences the future. The past shows us who we truly are. Reflect on, learn from the past, learn from who you are. Don't be afraid of it, but learn from who you are, what makes you you, in order to weaponize yourself in a good way. Weaponize yourself to best prepare for the future. Learn from your mistakes in the past. Learn from your ups and your downs, and aggregate that knowledge to make the best decisions for yourself moving forward. So overall, I would highly recommend you checking out Yasuke, especially if you're a fan of animes. I think Yasuke is a fantastic starter anime. If you're not into anime whatsoever, if you haven't explored the big three or any other animes altogether, this show is very Americanized in that it's easy to watch and easy to pick up as like a cartoon, essentially, more than an anime, even though it is technically an anime. Also, if you're a fan of Flying Lotus, highly recommend checking it out, because for that solely, it's worth 100%. So overall, I recommend checking out Yasuke. Let me know if you do in the comment section below, and leave a like if you liked any of the content in this review, and I'll catch you all later.